confused by their hello. Yeah, now this one is good. You know, I was initially really very confused by argument, but as you continue speaking, I realized that we really need to protect the local manufacturers, even if it's one, because you know this country should be very, very far. You remember 1981, we produced a car called Nyayo car. And some people came and told us this vehicle, because it's moving at 120 kilometers, it will never reach 180. Imagine if we continue to that car, now we will be the biggest manufacturer and exporter of vehicles in the region. So now when you are saying that the capacity, there's no market, the quality may be low, all those things, then my thinking is, can we protect this one producer whom you are competing with cheap pasta from other countries to make sure he expands, right? Even if you are going to eat that poor quality pasta, and anybody want to eat that high quality pays more, so that this investor can actually expand, and with the time, he can produce even better quality. Because I think why he's not expanding is because Mjengo, you are importing a lot of good pasta from other countries and exporting our jobs. So I think the more you speak, the more you are making it worse. And I know you are my friend, so limit your talking.
And perhaps I would like to persuade you to not call them a toy factory, please. Even if they are doing something, so don't call them a toy.
Appreciated, Chairman. Appreciated. For the information of the members here, Mjengo Limited is one of the largest biscuit manufacturers in East Africa today. We have overtaken or superseded our predecessors or the other manufacturers simply for one reason: quality. In the month of February, we were able to export our biscuits to the UK. This is not a small task. And manufacturing, we agree that we should support manufacturing 100%. And we're in favor of supporting manufacturing, but not where there is no economical sense. We understand. I mean, we have the financial muscle to invest, but as an investor, we will not invest in a spaghetti or pasta plant. There is no economical sense. You're not able, even for them, the imports are cheaper. The cost of production of spaghetti in the Middle East is much cheaper. They have cheaper flour, they have cheaper resources, yes, and the volume, 3,000 tons a day, is not something that can be challenged. The cost of efficiency, the cost of economical manufacturing cannot be competed with, and we understand. I mean, I understand 2 years or 3 years ago, there was a forum of biscuit manufacturers says that why don't we apply to the government and change the duty from 25 to 35? And Your Honorable, the Chair, I'm the one who refused for that duty to be improved or increased, simply for the fact that if we are not willing to improvise on the efficiencies of our own manufacturing sector, why are we in this business at all? We need to improvise our own efficiencies. We need to make ourselves more competitive. And the way to make ourselves more competitive is getting support on manufacturing for the supply of raw materials. I understand if the manufacturer could get, with no excise duty support or imported, but if the manufacturer could get duty exemption on his raw materials and everything, then there's an equal playing field, and we understand that let him build on his efficiencies. But right now, with the excise duty there, the exemption of the raw material, and it's still not economical. I mean, why has nobody else ever thought about putting up a spaghetti plant in East Africa?
Thank you, Chair. And maybe just to clarify, and through the Chair, I think there's, I remember my economics teacher taught me something about competitive advantage. And I think what Mujengo is talking about here is, even as a country, we need to look at where do we have competitive advantage. We do not want to manufacture each and everything. So for example, as he said, in the biscuit industry, we actually have the competitive advantage. Mujengo is manufacturing, exporting to Europe, exporting to the Middle East. They are selling biscuits to the Middle East. So there is opportunity to invest, but identify the right sectors, incentivize the industries, and you will then, the country will create employment. Now, if I use the example of where Mujengo is sourcing their product, which is in Egypt. Now, we are exporting a lot of our tea to Egypt. Now, Egypt have accepted they cannot grow tea. You can imagine if everyone wanted to grow and produce everything, we would not even have a market for tea, because then they would say, Kenya will grow our tea, we don't want your tea. So I think the message here is competitive advantage, honorable members, and if where we then do have that, we need to incentivize and identify which are those sectors. I would like to then hand over to Corazon. I think there are some questions that you had asked that we've not addressed.
Thank you, Maurice. I think there are two that are left over, but let me pick from where you have left it. As manufacturers figure out where we have competitive advantage, I think I want to remind us here that there's a people to feed. And there's a people to feed based on the various options that can be availed. So there's a very delicate balance that needs to be done so that the people are fed even as local manufacture is enhanced. And that's why we are saying there needs to be a level playing field. We're actually not saying 20% on local manufacturing. We're saying level the playing field and consider taking away the excise duty. Now, the one that you asked was around the numbers, how it is that we're looking at 175 and against 225, and yet there's just an excise duty of 20%. I'd just like to clarify that when it comes to importation, the taxes build up pretty quickly. So on importing anything, the customs value of that item is actually determined based on the freight costs would have to be incorporated to determine the value for that for taxation purposes. And then once you apply the import duty, you follow on to apply the excise duty. And it's at that point that then you apply VAT. So the taxes continue to build on, and therefore you end up with a ripple effect where it's not, you cannot just expect that the difference will be the 20%. There's a lot more that goes in there. I think we've covered what it is that we needed to cover. But again, the other thing to consider is on the issue of efficiencies. Why it's important for countries to consider efficiencies is because we are not just looking to manufacture for Kenya. I think that's that would be a narrow view. We are looking to manufacture not only for our Kenyan market, but also for a wider African market under the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and even a global market. So it is indeed very important that whatever incentives we give to manufacturers need to be towards increasing efficiencies rather than, just managing the costs locally. So I think that's. Oh, I see Mr. Raj has something to say, but that covers it for us.
Chair, one more thing. Like I said, we are one of the largest manufacturers of biscuits in East Africa. We buy our flour locally. If I were to import flour from Egypt, and it would still be cheaper than buying it locally, I think that would probably answer your question. the flour itself from Egypt imported, landed in Mombasa, will be cheaper than the flour in Kenya.
I think we have canvassed well on this matter. We will consider the views that you said and make a decision about that. You're also making a presentation on behalf of the Federation of Pharmaceutical Association. You may proceed to the next presentation.
Thank you, Chair. We stand guided, and we'll now proceed to the Federation of Kenya Pharmaceutical Manufacturers. And Vimal here will introduce himself.
Okay. And perhaps you could, just for the sake of your sitting arrangements, now that your client has changed, you can rearrange so that you have your next client. But Mjengo, you know, parliamentary sittings are open to the public, so I'm not chasing you away. You're welcome to continue observing the conversations. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, Chair. So we'll proceed as guided. So I'll let the Pharmaceutical Association introduce themselves.
Good morning to everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. I think all of you have a presentation that I'm going to talk about. So my name is Vimal Patel. I'm the chair of the local manufacturing sector of pharmaceuticals, which is FKPM. I'm just going to talk to you about the general pharma industry in this country. First, starting with where we are, what are we looking for? First and foremost, I think COVID has taught us something, that we need to be self-reliant in our own medicines. The second thing we need to remember, that medicines are very effective when they are delivered in time and when they are available at KEMSA. So I think we need to keep that. And then we talk about India. Why is India a great supplier of generic medicines? We shouldn't be talking about that. We should be talking why Kenya cannot be an India of Africa. Now I want you to visualize that for my power presentation. We have 34 local manufacturers. We don't employ as many people as the apparel sectors, because this is a very specific industry, and we have right now about 8,000 people employed and indirectly 15,000. The turnover of these 33 countries, if you put it together, is about more than $200 million. Now, where I'm coming from is that we can increase the revenue to Kenya by exporting. If you look at the Maghreb countries, that is Algeria, Tunisia, and if you look at South Africa, all these countries have preference treatment to the local manufacturers. Kenya does not. And I'll come back to it why. And that's why you will understand why this VAT proposal that you're putting in will not be favorable to local manufacturing, especially when we want direct investments to come to this country. Now, the proposal here is that we want to put raw materials under exempt that are supplied either imported or bought locally. If you do that, it means that the input VAT that the supplier incurs will not be claimable. So obviously the price goes up, which then translates for the local manufacturers either to import that stuff and goes against the ethos of local manufacturing. Now, before this comes into play, remember that the present scenario is not in favor of local manufacturing, and I'll explain to you why. Medicines are exempted. That means that anything that is involved coming in, when medicines are exempt, there is no tax on it. People assume zero. But the inputs that go inside it, that VAT is unclaimable, so it's a cost. If you go to my slide that I've shown on the picture, you will see a factory. The factory, to make it, needs an infrastructure. It needs a building. Now, if we build a building, there's a VAT element. Then there's a laboratory to test the medicines. So it needs all the instruments to test it. There are utilities and there are services. All these 4 items, they are vettable. We, at this moment, cannot claim that back. It's a cost to us. Yeah? Whereas an importer doesn't have this kind of cost. Imagine, I will tell you for myself, I have an electricity bill of 7 million shillings a month. I'm paying VAT on it. This is just one item. An importer who has a warehouse will have an electricity bill of 200,000. So he has to absorb 16% of that. I have to absorb 17% of that. It doesn't make economical sense. Now, if you bring the present proposal to even do this, it makes it more expensive. What is the impact? The impact is very simple. We're not going to have foreign direct investments coming here because it's not economical. We are going to be a Nakumet type of a company that just imports, and then when we have things like COVID, we're going to run around to India, and India says, sorry, we don't want to export because we want to look after our own populations. You guys worry about your problems. We don't want to go through that. We want a self-reliant industry that is there to protect our country and our people. The second thing we want is that I don't want to talk about India. We want people to talk about Kenya to be the India of Africa. So there's a huge potential of exports. Now, if you build all these things that are there, how are we going to be competitive against Uganda? For example, Uganda right now, for your information, the number of factories growing up there are faster because they put medicines that are locally made under zero rated and imported medicines are exempt. So that encourages manufacturing. So they claim all these buildings that they do and the time of recovering, all that VAT they can recover in time. Also, we need to understand that when we import medicines from India, are we saying all these factories are great? They're not. There are 50,000 manufacturers in India, and the range is different. We've heard so many articles about children dying because of this cough syrup being the wrong item being used. Quality is not just about testing. Quality is about inspecting how a manufacturer makes something from A to Z. The raw materials, everything. Having local manufacturers, PPB, who is the regulator, can go and see them and see how it's being manufactured. There is an example in my presentation shown where I've shown where a zero rating and an exempt status makes on medicines. And you've seen there's a difference of pricing completely on it. So if something is are we looking at the same slide? Yeah. So if something is under zero rating costing 400, I think, yeah, Chairman, you got the right presentation. And something that is on exempt.
So, honorable members, he's referring. It's not paginated, but talking about this comparison between VAT exemptions and zero rating.
Yeah, so can we go to this page here? Comparisons
And then the
between
next
VAT
page is
exempt and zero rating.
Examples of impact on manufactured commodities at zero rate and exempt raw materials zero rate.
Correct?
Yes.
So now you'll see very clearly
Here.
what the difference between zero.
Hold on, so that we are together.
Correct.
Help Honorable Adipo there, and Honorable Yula. This one.
This one here.
Okay, fine. Proceed.
Yeah. So if you look at the first example, is an example where medicines are zero rated. So in that case, because we can claim the VAT, the cost will be 400 shillings. Right now, what the status is medicine being exempt, the VAT that goes into the inputs are unclaimable. So something that was 400 shillings under zero now becomes 464. Yeah. The imported medicines do not have this kind of stuff, because under exempt, the only thing that they have to pay for is far less than an infrastructure cost. Can we proceed to the next page? So these are the proposals that I have, but one thing I really want to make clear, if we can go down to the page where I have the diagram, and I'll show you which one. This page. Yep. Please refer to this page. Now, when you refer to this page, presently medicines are exempt. And what it does mean is that if there's a local manufacturer putting a factory here, he has to put a building, he has to have laboratory, he has to have electricity and utilities and services. All these are vettable items. Right now, I cannot claim them back. It's a cost to the company. That cost now goes onto the medicine. But look at this scenario, that you import medicines from India. He doesn't have to, that person who is importing doesn't have to worry about all these costs, about a building that is so big, a laboratory, utilities. I gave you an example where their utility bill is far less than ours. Doesn't have to worry about that. So when we talk about level playing field, this is an example of not a level playing field. Now, if you start putting on raw materials an exempt status, that means the inputs further will have a further increasing cost for local manufacturing. So what is our proposal? Honorable committee, we need to look at, first and foremost, zero rating local manufacturers and exempting importers, and do away with bringing exemption on raw materials. This will encourage the build of the local pharma industry. This will encourage Kenya to be a bigger player in Africa. This will encourage investments coming, and when investments outside come, they bring technology. I'll give you a good example, if I may, and the time permits. If you look at Algeria, you look at Morocco, you look at India, you look at Bangladesh, what they told people from overseas, you want to manufacture and you want to sell your products in our country, you either tie up with a local manufacturer or put a plant here. Why? Because this is a security. And by doing that, people started investing. And that's why you see India is what India is. That's why the Maghreb countries are where they are. And that's what we need to do. Let's stop talking about those countries. Let's start talking about Kenya. Thank you.
Thank you, Vimal. Thank you, Chair, for giving that as opportunity. I'll let my colleague Monica introduce herself and talk specifically to the clauses in the finance bill that then we are proposing to be amended.
Thank you, Maurice. So, Honorable Chair and members, Vimal is the FKM chairman who understands the industry well. And the federation is that body then that talks to the policy of the pharmaceutical manufacturers in Kenya. Currently, we have around 35 of them. And Kenya is one of the largest exporters. And we are happy to come into this discussion right after we were talking about the need for the government to incentivize the manufacturing industry. So our proposal today is for an amendment to the Finance Bill 2023 under Clause 34A1 so that we retain the status quo of zero rating the inputs and raw materials that are supplied to our pharmaceutical manufacturers in Kenya, so that we're able to then support the manufacturing, the local manufacturing in Kenya.
Thank you very much. Are there questions from all members? I think you've made yourself very clear. You know, perhaps Maneki, you should claim a discount from the consultancy fees for BWC because you did the explanation, the weightlifting. Like now, my friend Monica, you know, Monica and I went to university together. What are they doing here? Because you represented yourself very well. But thank you. Really, it's we really understand the impact of zero rating and exemption. But for some reason, even senior government officials use the term tax exempt and zero rating interchangeably, which I find really, next time we'll have a conversation with them, I will tell them there's a huge difference between tax exemption and zero rating. And until we get that correctly, we will always get this wrong. Because someone will say, but why are you complaining? Because we have actually exempted you from tax. But what we are really doing, as you rightfully put, is that it's going to be easier to just set up a warehouse in Industrialia and import all the everything and sell and still become competitive. But most importantly, during a time we're talking about universal healthcare, there's a point you made about medicine. You know, it's not just about testing; it is about inspecting. I find that very, very, very critical, because once you have all this medicine coming from India, yes, you get to test, but that doesn't really assure of the quality of that medicine. But if we incentivize our manufacturers here, it is possible to go to the factory and actually make sure that they're doing the right thing. So we will do our best. Of course, from the revenues perspective, it has revenue repercussions, because now that way you get to claim that your VAT on Kenya Power, which has revenue implications. But we'll do our best to make sure that we actually walk the talk of making sure that Kenya is a manufacturing hub and becomes the India of Africa. Asante sana.
I have one more say.
Yeah, okay, sure. Go.
I appreciate your understanding, but there's one thing, it's not about revenue all the time, it's a cost of people's lives. I think there is a bigger intangible cost there, correct? It's not just money coming in, money going out. There's an intangible cost, and we should look at that.
And we still have a budget to finance. We still need to make sure we fix the road that goes to your factory. We still need to do the medicine that are going to the hospitals. We make sure there is a hospital so that your medicine can go to that. So if you don't have money to build that hospital, now you'll also close shop. But anyway, we get it. We'll try. We'll try the best to balance of them. But and appreciate what you're saying. Yeah, it's about what comes first, the chicken or the egg, but we will do our best. Thank you very much, PwC, and thank you very much, Association of Pharmaceuticals. Sure, it's important. Okay.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Nihal Shah. I'm the Vice Chairman of FKPM and CEO of BioDeal Laboratories. After hearing what Dr. Vimal has to say, I just wanted to add, we as an association, we've been engaging with IFC, UNIDO, WHO, and every other acronym you can think of. One thing that everybody's in agreement is that Kenya is primed to be the hub of pharmaceutical manufacturing for sub-Saharan Africa. To that end, a lot of quality improvements have been going on. A lot of the investors have put in over $200 million over the last 10 years, improving capacity. There was a perception we don't have the capacity. That perception has been put to rest. There's now a perception that we don't have quality. That perception is being put to rest. And therefore, what we have also proposed as FKPM to the government, to Ministry of Health, Ministry of Industry, that should some of this tax incentives and everything go through, and there's a whole raft of proposals we've made, we're expecting to go from an export potential of approximately 70 million US dollars currently to $700 million in the next 5 to 6 years, plus attract at least another 10 factories to be set up. That is possible. That's the vision, that's the dream, and it's very much in our grasps. What we are now seeing is the small excise, which is really, let's be very clear, it's really just the, sorry, not the excise, it's the exempt really on the inputs, the raw material inputs specifically. We're already exempt on electricity and that, and we're absorbing that into the cost. However, just this small thing actually is going to shoot it up by way more than the 16% of electricity that we're absorbing, right? That's the difference in clarification we need to understand. Uganda is zero-rated its industries and is paying them, and we're seeing, for in the last 6 years, from 3 industries, they're now at 10 industries, and this is the one single tax policy which has enabled them to do it, and one single tax policy which is sort of putting a cap on our potential growth. So I just wanted to bring that and make it very clear that where we can be in 5 years and what's stopping us, and it's just a small thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, PWC. Make your closing remarks, if any. Proceed.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. So we want to thank you for this opportunity to hear our views, and we appreciate the time you've given us. And our prayer, we hope that our views and our clients' views will be considered for the betterment of our country. We are all Kenyans, so we are definitely here to support our country in terms of meeting revenue growth for the National Treasury, but as well as also creating employment and opportunities for our citizens. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. I like that. This is our Kenya. We have to... Kenya Kwanza, sio India Kwanza. Asanteni, now you're free to go run the pharmaceuticals. And make sure you give us, so that you pay taxes. Asante, have a good day. Honorable members, our next stakeholder is ACE class. I don't know if they pronounce it as ACE class or AS class. Consultants. No, it's ACE ACE class. It could be also be ASA class. It can be.
Sorry, we have a presentation. That's the reason why we wanted to sit to one side of, so that we don't obstruct the view for members.
That's fine. That's fine. Yes, you're welcome. Please introduce yourself and your team and the people you are representing.
Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, honorable members. My name is FCPA Robert Wariro. I'm here as a representative of ACE Class Consultants Limited, and we've got 2 presentations. But before I launch into that, I'd like to just introduce my colleague. I'll just ask her to stand up because she's a bit far. That's Christine Derito. She's my colleague. And then I'm also representing the betting consortium, whose members are seated to my right. So I'll just pass the microphone with your permission, Chair, so that they can introduce themselves.
That's a PowerPoint presentation. That's why he... you'll see him.
Good morning, members. I'm Ruth Ndichu. I come from Milestone Games. milestone games. Sport Pesa.
You know, you people have changed your names so many times, but it's okay. That's a story for another day.
And my name is Nelia Swanjiku Karaoke. I am from Raise and Maize Limited.
Good morning. My name is Dos Karaoke. I'm from Kensen Limited.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So just very, very quickly, I'd just like to refer members to the very brief proposal that is contained in the letter that is before you, Ichiban. And this is the proposal for Greenlight Planet, which is what I request to start with, because it's very, very brief. And because I was here on Tuesday, I know most of the issues have already been canvassed, so I will not take much of your time, Chairman. And really, just to reiterate, our client's request for the whole issue of reconsidering the whole issue of deferral of foreign exchange, realized foreign exchange losses, because Greenlight Planet, they're in the business of renewable energy, and so they import a lot of their products, and so they generally face a foreign exchange risk of loss. And so that's the reason why we are requesting for a reconsideration of that issue from 3-year limit to an open-ended limit. And then lastly, Chair, I know we discussed at great length the whole issue.
I am sorry to take you back. You know, in my I assumed that your presentation was about betting. So now, when you start talking about something else, I'm like, I actually missed that. So please,
okay,
start again so
okay.
that
no
we
problem.
go together.
Okay, no problem, Chairman. Well guided. So I just wanted to refer members to the brief proposal that is written Ichiban. Okay, I can see it's being distributed.
That's why we are missing each other, because we don't have that.
Okay, it's being distributed. So
okay, Ichiban.
Yes. Okay. So, Chairman, what I was saying about this presentation is that I was here on Tuesday, and most of these issues have been canvassed, and that's the reason why I didn't want to take a lot of your time. Just to reiterate the request by the client there around the whole issue of foreign exchange deferrals, and the whole issue of the deposit on appeal. And so the only question really that I just wanted to highlight is on page 2 of that paper, Chairman. And this is the whole issue of the 35% tax on employee earnings. And we are requesting that threshold be reviewed from 500,000 to 750,000, if at all the committee is minded to still introduce the 35% tax rate. So, Chairman, allow me to just stop at that, because the paper is quite brief and self-explanatory, so that I can then go into the betting consortia presentation. Thank you. So, Chairman, just to confirm that members can see the presentation on screen. Okay, thank you. So allow me to just take a minute of your time to ask one of the consortium members to just briefly set the stage in terms of the betting sector, because we realize this is one of the sector that is most misunderstood. And so allow me to just ask Ruth Ndisho to just set the scene for that before we proceed to the presentation.
Thank you. So the gaming and betting, and generally called the gambling industry, is mainly comprised of four subsectors. We'd call it the lottery, the prize competition, the gaming, which consists of the casinos, and the sports betting provided by the betting companies who are here today. Well, the regulations sort of date back to 1966. The first sports betting company really started operations back in 2013, and the industry, of course, grew. I think it experienced its peak back in 2018. That's when it was at its best. And then from then it has kind of been a downward trajectory, where in 2019 we saw 2 main exits by key players in the sports betting industry. After that, of course, it has been downhill, and that is why this morning we are here to present our case, so that you don't kill what's left of it.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Chairman, just a direction from the chair. I had been requested to stand. I don't know whether I should do that. Okay, thank you. So, honorable members, I just want to take us through the presentation very, very briefly. This is what is in front of you. That's a slide deck that we're going through. And really, we want to just start with the end in mind. And so, these really are our pleas. And what we're asking is, we are requesting this honorable committee to consider removing excess duty on betting. We also want you to consider removing the definition, the new definition of winnings, and we'll explain why we think that that is a reasonable thing to do. And then we're also requesting for this committee to consider reducing the withholding tax on winnings from 20% to 10%. And then lastly, our fourth prayer is elimination of the proposed excess duty on advertising fees, and we'll explain why shortly. So members, those are our pleas. And without going into the agenda items, this is the proposed amendments. These are the three key proposed amendments that we are focusing on in this finance bill. And the first one is basically increasing excess duty on betting from 7.5% to 20%. That is the proposal that is contained in section 43B 4 of the finance bill. The second one is the introduction of excise duty at 15% on advertising, where advertising houses, be they media or be they radio stations or billboards, when they advertise for alcoholic drinks and betting, there is a proposal to introduce excess duty at 15%. And then the last one is the proposal to redefine winnings as it's currently defined in the Income Tax Act, so that when you win, you are said to have won, including your stake, and that's a proposal that we're going to be addressing. So those are the proposals in the Finance Bill 2023. Now, this comes within the backdrop of a heavily taxed sector. And Chairman and members, if you look at what's presented before you, we've got at least five taxes for this sector. The first one is 15% on gross gaming revenue. Now, gross gaming revenue is the total value of bets received less the payouts. If you take a summation of that, bets received less what you have paid out, that's what you call your gross gaming revenue. And on that, under the Betting Act, there is a 15% charge or tax on that. In addition to that, if you then happen to make a profit as a betting company, you will then pay corporation tax, because after all, you are a company. So there is corporation tax that applies to you. And then if I, Robert, as a punter, win anything, then I am subject to 20% tax on that winning. And this is an important one, Chairman, because when I place a bet and I am told that I have won 1 million shillings, I expect to be paid 1 million shillings because that is a contract with the betting company. So inevitably, these betting companies then end up paying the 20% withholding tax on that winning. And then there is the 7.5%, currently 7.5% excise duty on the stake that I have put in. And then lastly, because betting suppliers are VAT exempt, anything that we purchase, be they advertisements, be they rent or anything else, we are going to be subject to 16% VAT. So, Chairman and members, this is an industry that has been significantly taxed for a very, very long time, and this is the reason why we are before you today. Now, if we look at the impact of this tax regime on this sector, as you'll see there's been a decline, and we've started from the very good years, 2018, when the sector sort of stabilized. As you can see there, the gross gaming revenue was 46 billion. And as a result of having a high gross gaming revenue, then the 15% gross gaming tax was quite significant. And you can see there that it was 16 billion shillings. However, as the sector has been hit by various changes in terms of taxes, you can see that has reduced, and today we're talking about a total take of 2.4 billion shillings only from this sector. Why? Because of the amount of taxes that have been levied in this sector. And this is why we're saying the key trend drivers, of course, was the COVID-19, like any other business, but more importantly, the difficult operating environment, which has caused the exit of certain players. And so this is the reason why you can see that there's a huge decline in terms of the total tax take. Now, perhaps that table doesn't do sufficient justice, and this is the reason why we put in that table. And you can see the significant dip, especially from the first year. You can see the significant dip. Then excise duty stabilized. There was a slight improvement in 2020, 2021, and then it came back in, and you can see the trend has started coming down. And if you look at the yellow line, that shows you the compounded annual growth rate. It's actually a decline of 23.5%, which suggests that the more we continue taxing this sector, the more we shall be reducing our tax take as a country. And really, that is informed, and I appreciate that you may not see that very well, but this is informed by the unpredictable fiscal policy that we have seen in this sector. Because if you look at a tax like withholding tax, for example, first introduced in 2014, removed in 2016, reintroduced in 2018, and then changed in 2020. So you can see there's a lot of uncertainty in this sector, and that is what is causing the decline in terms of tax revenues. Now, if you are a rational, if you bet, and I don't know whether members can be able to see this. The reason why it's in black is because it's really a somber affair, you know. That's the reason why it's being called the death knell. Because if you are a bettor, or you're a person, you're a betting man or woman for that matter, if you bet 1,000 shillings and there's a 20% excise duty, at the end of the day, you will go home with 866 shillings, even if you have won. So really, there is no use of even trying to bet, because of the number of taxes. Yet, the taxman will be going home with 383 shillings from that bet of 1,000 shillings. So really, what we are saying is that the taxman really is the one who is benefiting here and killing this industry, because nobody will be willing to bet. And you can see, even with 7.5% excise duty, even despite winning, you will still go home with 967 shillings, despite having won. So really, there is no incentive for anybody to engage in this business, and that's the reason why we're saying it really is killing the industry. So why are we saying that we would want the committee to consider a removal of the excise duty? The first issue is that there's multiple taxation, because in addition to, and we've gone through the 5 taxes that impact this sector. You know, there's withholding tax on winnings, there is 15% betting tax or gross gaming revenue, and so on and so forth. So really, this is a sector that is overtaxed. Number 2, if you're a betting person and you understand how this works, I will put 1,000 shillings on M-Pesa, I bet I win 1,300, and then I bet the 1,300. So if you continue taxing the amount that I am staking, it basically means that you're taxing this amount each and every time that I take a position from a sporting perspective. And that's the reason why we are saying, eventually we are going to exhaust these funds. And then now, if you talk about excess duty and you try and understand why excess duty was brought in, especially with regard to these services, excess duty is levied on the charge. So that's the reason why when you transfer your money from M-Pesa from your bank to M-Pesa, and the bank charges you the transfer fee, there is an excess duty on that charge. But now when I place a bet, there is no charge. None of these betting companies will charge me for that. Yet I am required to still pay excess duty on that stake. And really, we are saying that is fertile ground for disputes with Revenue Authority, which we were trying to avoid as a sector. And then the truth of the matter is, why this sector is declining. As a result of these taxes, we have seen an explosion, for example, in Tanzania. Why? Because of the regime in Tanzania. And today, I just need to sit in Kenya, here, where we are, and I will be able to place a bet when, I don't follow football very much, but when the UEFA Champions League final comes up, I can be able to place a bet from Kenya with a betting house in Tanzania, because I have got PayPal, I've got M-Pesa, and so on and so forth. And that's the reason why we are saying it's important for us to secure this sector, so that we don't have infiltration of the sector by external forces. And unfortunately, when you've got this kind of infiltration, none of us wins. Neither the exchequer collects any revenue, and the betting companies also do not win. And that's the reason why we are saying we should watch for that black market. So that's on excess duties, and we really implore the committee to consider scrapping that one. Now, in terms of winnings and advertising, really, when you win and you're taxed at 20%, we are saying it's the betting companies that incur that cost eventually, because I have won 1 million shillings, I expect to see 1 million shillings in my bank account. And that's the reason why we are saying it's really a multiple taxation. But more importantly, members and chairman, is that what the finance bill is trying to address has already been addressed by the High Court in a case where they have defined what winnings are. And if you think about it, if you place 1,000 bob bet and you get 1,300, we cannot say that your winning is 1,300. You've just recovered essentially your capital, and got an additional 300. So your winning is 300, and that's what has been happening in practice, and that is what has been subjected to tax. And so we are requesting that that definition of winnings be removed so that we remain with the status quo, which is taxing the winning element as has been defined by the High Court. And Chairman, if we allow this proposal to pass as drafted, then essentially we'll be taxing capital of people, because my initial bet is my capital. And the Income Tax Act actually seeks to tax the income, not the capital of a business or of an undertaking or an enterprise. And that's the reason why we are saying we should perhaps review this provision. And lastly, on advertising, if we were to impose the 15% excise duty on advertising, and remember this had come in last year as well, and this committee considered it and said no, it's going to have a negative impact in terms of job creation. We already saw losses in terms of the media and advertising space because of the reduced spend by this company. So we are requesting this committee to consider that and remove that particular provision. And one of the questions that has always been asked is, well, but we need to regulate this sector, and we are saying, as a sector, we are actually ahead of the game in the sense that we are self-regulating. We've got self-exclusion, which is basically you opt to not bet, and the system will not allow you to bet until the period you've selected expires. We've got account and age limits, so that not everybody is limiting. So this is a sector that is self-regulating and is working quite well as we speak. The most important thing is that you cannot even use your bonga points to bet, because we do not allow that kind of transaction. And so when people talk about it being a harmful vice or a vice in the society, really this is a sector that is trying to self-regulate. Now it's important for us to consider what is a comparative practice. And Chairman, I think if you look at Tanzania, because this is a market that has really done well, you can see that overall they started just like Kenya, 20% withholding tax on winnings. They had a decline in terms of their total tax take. When they reduced it to 15%, the growth went up 48% in terms of total tax revenue. They further reduced it to 10%, and it went up to 13% year on year. And what that suggests is that this is a sector that can potentially grow and contribute to this to Kenya's revenues if it's properly nurtured. Now, we're just looking at some statistics, Chairman and members. As of 30th April 2023, Tanzania Revenue Authority was 109% of its target, was at 109% of its target in terms of betting revenues. And this suggests that this is a sector that is now contributing, it's playing its proper role in terms of driving revenues for that country. And we think that Kenya should also go that route. If you also look at another sector, another country, the UK. UK has got a gross gaming revenue of 6.5%. Yet, despite such a low rate, and that's the only tax that is levied in this sector, they have grown 10.8% over the last year. South Africa has got 15% gross gaming revenue, and again, they grew 48%. And we're asking ourselves, isn't it time that Kenya looks at its regime in terms of taxing this sector and also seeks to grow? And this table, Chairman, just reflects the kind of rates that we have seen. If you look at the fourth line, Kenya is the only country that has got 4 taxes on that table. Everybody else is focusing on gross gaming revenue. And you can see Tanzania, 25% gross gaming revenue. That is actually what explains the 109% target. And you can see all the way down, Denmark has got 28% of gross gaming revenue. The median is 15%, but we are saying this is perhaps an area that the stakeholders can have a look at in order to drive revenue, more revenue from this sector. And so, Chairman and members, really our request is let's remove excess duty from betting. Let's reduce withholding tax to 20% to 10% from 20%. Let's remove the confusion and the taxation impact that the winnings definition, the proposed winnings definition has, so that we can then collect more revenues from the government and secure jobs. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, FCPA. Are there questions or follow-up inquiries from honorable members? Yes, up with the Honorable Mboni.
Thank you very much. I really didn't want to talk much about this sector because for the last 3-4 years, when I'm in this committee, I've seen what has been happening to the sector. So it's a sector which we need really to look at it. And as a country, we ask yourself, do we actually require this sector? Or we tax them to death? So it's something which, as a country, we have to really think about. But I was just wondering, your last table, table 14. You are saying Kenya, they impose corporate tax of that %, and other countries, they don't. Is that true? Because these are companies. Yes.
Is there another question? Maybe I would like to hear your views about what do you call it? Price control? The one you call, and then told you need to contribute a minimum amount, and then you're supposed to buy a motorbike, is bidding, and then I think the person who bids the least wins the bike. And I'm asking this because I'm a little concerned. I am actually very much concerned about what is happening in especially our radio stations, and especially our vernacular radio stations. You go to the constituency, and I've in her 70s, and then she's telling me she's praying very hard that she wins some money because she just needs to call, and then and it's very rampant in especially vernacular stations. And find because it's price competition, yes. And you find out of the morning program, especially during the peak hours, the morning and in the evening, the entire conversation is about that kind of betting. And especially now, you see a lot of uptake of radio. Actually, interestingly, I thought that with the growing internet, you'll find a radio station going on. But actually, there's considerable growth in listenership for radio, even more than TV. So if, as a country, we're spending all that time in the morning and in the evening talking about betting, even if it's not illegal, but as a country now, we are going to become a country of gamblers. Because this is a time that you are probably dropping your kids. This is a time that you are probably dropping your kid at school or picking it up at school in the evening. Time people are around the table having dinner. So you have this, the next generation of those children growing up with all that. I am a bit concerned about that sector. I don't know what you're doing about it, because you told me this sector is self-regulating. And then, how could we help you stop the competition you're getting from when betting companies set up outside Kenya, but of course, you can bet through their online platforms? Because I think one of your stakeholders did a presentation here, I think it was day 1 or day 2, and they're telling about a company that has actually closed, but they are not going far. They're actually going to set up in Malawi, and therefore their customers are still going to bet from here, but the company is going to be in Malawi. Therefore, we lose up on the employment opportunities from that company, and then we lose up on all the taxes
for the industry. When you have, we call it offshoring, when you're offshoring these operations, essentially the betting companies in Kenya do not benefit, neither does the exchequer benefit. In fact, if anything, we are exacerbating the problem that we have of foreign exchange, because nobody in Malawi will take your Kenya shillings. They will want to deal with dollars, which we are in short supply. So we do agree with you that certainly this industry needs support. But allow me to just respond briefly to Honorable Mboni's question through the chair about the clarification on page 14. Indeed, Chairman, these other countries do not impose corporation tax, even though these entities are companies. And the reason is, it is more efficient and better for the revenue administration to tax one item, and that is gross gaming revenue. You see, what currently happens is that I've got my bets, I've got, say somebody has bet 1 million shillings, and then I have paid out, say, 200 shillings, 200,000. So my gross gaming revenue is 800,000. On that gross gaming revenue, let us take a cut. And some of these countries like Tanzania, they take 25% off that amount. So it's like taxing the gross profit here. And then after that, we leave you alone and we let you be. So from an administration perspective, it is so much simpler for the entire sector. And that's the reason why you see Tanzania is going ahead. South Africa, the same thing. All these countries that we've listed on page 14, they only impose gross gaming revenue. And that makes administration easier, and we'll never have to fight about expenses back and forth. And so that is the answer to Honorable Mboni's question. It's only in Kenya where we have a corporate income tax on these companies, in addition to gross gaming revenue. So effectively, we are taxing it twice.
Honorable Mboni, you now, you see now the concerns you're getting. It's up to the Honorable Mboni, then Honorable Kenan, Grab, then Honorable Dip.
I think my good friend, that gentleman is my friend, by the way. But I think on this, I'm differing with him. And I think we need evidence on this, because there's no way you can tell us in these countries, they don't charge corporate tax. Is it that they like gaming these countries? Is it that, I mean, gaming is a very, very good thing. If they are tasking, imposing tax on, corporate tax on companies which are manufacturing food, right? And then gaming, they are not. To me, seriously, as an economist, does not really make sense. I think give us some evidence so that at least we can be very comfortable with what you are saying. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Kenan.
Thank you, Chairman. I came late, but I think I got the gist of the matter. I can see what is being proposed. First of all, this particular sector, once upon a time, the Kenya Charity Soup Sector, with their kiosks, you know how it used to work. It used to be explained an abomination. You know the class of people who are associated with the Kenya Charity Soup Sector, and those kiosks and how it used to happen. I think right now we need to address two things. One, I don't know whether I'll call it a moral or ethical issue. I mean the issue the chairman has just raised there, because right now, like, we have a country to protect. We have children. Gaming, as part of the diversification of actually our economy, will be there, and it's there all over. But equally, if we put a lot of emphasis on this at the expense of everything else, because right now kids are not going to school, very soon most of our productive groups actually might stop working and just say they need to game. And you know, addiction is something that is real. This is like alcohol. It's allowed, but it comes with certain restrictions. Do it, but let it not have an impact on the mental growth, the physical growth, the psychological growth of anybody, again, those who are not in that particular grouping. So, Chairman, I don't think whether the issue of self-regulation is workable. It can't work in this particular sector. We have to agree on non-regulations that everybody will be expected to follow. So that's the first thing on this. The second thing is you have presented a green picture on the dyeing sector. Let's just do a comparative analysis. 2018-2019 is when this field was fairly new. Everybody was expected. You toy around that if you bet on 100 shilling, you'll get this. And I think this should be attributed to your own failures as a group. Maybe you didn't meet the expectations of those who are betting, the bettors. And that's why, you know, it's like if you have had close to 1,000 people betting for winning 1 million shilling and one person wins, the other 1,000 people betted, one person got. You have how many people now? 900 and 99. Those 99 will be discouraged. Yes, certainly their numbers will reduce. Then if somebody has been betting for 10 years, 15 years, maybe let's call it 2 years, 3 years, and their luck didn't come, obviously we expect this. So this dying sector, Chair, but this graph, because if you look at it, you know, it's presented. Then too, we're making comparison with Malawi. I know Malawi very well. I'm sorry, I know this is an open platform. There's no comparison at all between Kenya and Malawi. In every aspect, yes, geographically we're in, but geopolitically we're in Africa. You know the state of the economy right now. You know the state of the economy. Without prejudice, yeah, because I'm a lot of reference actually to international relations. So there's no comparison at all. Tanzania, the circumstances are completely different. We may be in East Africa together. Of course, they are also in SADC. Again, the comparison. So I think what we need to do is, for me, I need to be persuaded. Self-regulation out of question. Let's agree on acceptable. Your contribution or the contribution of this particular sector to the economy is not something that can be denied. It's something that will be there. But equally, we need also to put stringent measures that will safeguard your business, because you're not offering humanitarian services. You're also there purely on business. Your driving point is business, is profit motivation. For those of us, you are servants. We are your servants. You have elected us. We have 3 roles: to protect the rights of the citizens, protect the rights of you people as the profiteers, or the agents of what are they called? The beggars, as my chairman has called it, the planters, for their right to buy. But more fundamentally, we have also a country where you, me, and everybody else subscribes to as a citizen, or as, of course, the planters can be here as investors, can also be as business people, can also. So all these combined, I've gone through your presentation. I appreciate your elegance. I also appreciate your, but really most of them are misleading. Just to, you know, create a bit of emotions. And I expected you now to say, give proposals, counter proposals. This is the tax that been proposed. These are the pitfalls that have been identified, both in law. It can even be perceptual. And, you know, perception is one of the biggest impediment actually to effective communication, and that might be the challenge. So bring out the silent issues so that we can come up. The law is not static. The law is not static, so that as we look at this critically from a tax point of view, because this committee is in charge of finance, and this, we also look at the overall picture that might not have been actually captured within the framework of these tax proposals that will ultimately add value to the well-being of your companies, the well-being of the people of Kenya, that will also not deny the government the taxes required, because without the taxes, we'll all lose. So I think that's the approach that I want us to take, instead of creating this narrative. Anybody who's not familiar with the detail is scary. Like you're saying, this tax should be disregarded completely. But that's not the issue. Bring the underlying issue so that we can reason together. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I want first of all to declare that I have never participated in any betting business in Kenya since I was born. Whether I'll never. I want to declare that I've never engaged in any betting, so I'm not part of your clients in any way, whether it is the local character in the villages, or the pool, or whatever. I'm not, or the radio shows. I've never. I'm not conflicted here, but I want to advise that, Chairman, honestly speaking, from the presentations that have been here since we started, this is business. It is an investment in their it's just like when I'm, you know, me, I'm a pastoralist. I do fattening, and I get my life there. You guys have your life in betting. So let's agree that, honestly speaking, if you tax an investment of someone who has not won, who lost, and you tax, if I have seen these calculations, and even previously, it means when you bet, chances are you will get less money than the one that you gave out. And honestly, Chairman, that is not a good business environment. That is something that we must look at so that we save these people and make. Once someone goes to the market, he must get profit. He must get profit from what he's taking. So, and I have seen the declining revenues to government in terms of betting contribution to the economy or our budget. So, what am I saying? I'm saying, well, let's look at also the sins, the devil in gaming and the profit in gaming. It brings us income. I'm sure my brother here, Rico, has a gaming company, a betting company that has done some boreholes, done some scholarships, does some good work in society. That is excellent. Then, how do we treat the issue of addiction? Addiction is a terrible thing among the youth. In Kenya, betting is something different, especially the youth. They think, when I enter this, there's no need to continue with my university education, there's no need to do farming, there's no need to look at the cattle.